This is Mike Dilke with the Relaxback UK show. On the Relaxback UK show, we explore all kinds of health topics, so keep listening and enjoy the ride. Hi, and thanks for joining me, Mike Dilke, on the Relaxback UK show. The topic this week is something that actually sometimes alarms me quite a lot, and that's the use of medical practices and medicines that are based on very little evidence, and in some cases, absolutely none at all.
It's more a question of the evaluation of health claims. Is a claim legitimate? Is it based on evidence? Does it make sense? Who's making it? Does a person have a track record of illegal activity or dishonesty? So it's really a question of what is the claim? Does the claim make sense?
My guest is Dr. Stephen Barrett, who's been looking at false medical claims for many years. And as health systems kind of are coming under more pressure around the world, certainly the NHS in the UK is, my concern is that many people are going to be turning to things that they hope may help them, but they're going to end up being very disappointed. Before we carry on, let me just tell you some of my own personal thoughts, which I kind of rarely do on this show, I have to say. Alternative type therapies and medicines I don't think are necessarily bad if they give some comfort. In fact, I use them sometimes. Maybe some of them work, maybe some of them don't. Perhaps there's a placebo effect. But if they end up fleecing the patient, ending up costing a lot of money, and prevent them getting help from something that is proven and would probably cure them, then I must admit I get very concerned. So please do stay around to listen to Dr. Stephen Barrett. He's a very interesting and experienced guy. Thank you.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So my guest today is Dr. Stephen Barrett. He is a retired medical doctor and he's specialised as a psychiatrist, and he's also worked for 50 years or so looking at what he describes as questionable medical practices. Now, I really enjoyed my chat with him. He's a very interesting guy, nice guy, but interestingly, he's also a world-class swimmer. And I started my chat by asking him just to tell me something about that.
I'll be 90 next September. I started when I was 75. They had a local meet, and I decided I would enter it. It was at the pool where I swam for recreation and fitness, and nobody showed up. So I won most of the events I entered. One of them I didn't. I got a toe cramp. And then I decided I would try at the state level. And to my surprise, I actually won 2 events at the state championship. So then, after talking with various people, I decided I would get some coaching and see if I could improve. And I was doing strength training and just getting stronger using machines to strengthen my arms and so on. Just getting stronger made me faster. So I got some very, very good coaching, and I gradually got a little bit faster. Most people, as they get older, get slower. I improved my stroke so much that I got a little faster as I got older, and I got to the point where I could occasionally win at national championships, and state championships I do very well now. The people who were better than I am have all retired or died. So at my age in North Carolina, I win almost everything I enter.
So you are still competing now at age 89. That's fantastic.
Yes, I'm hoping if I live long enough, I have my eye on one particular record that I hope I can break when I'm 95. But you never know. It's
Fantastic. All right. Well, look. Good luck with that. That alone, I just find inspiring. But
well, it's actually it's I swim mostly for fitness, and it's very important to exercise, and it will protect you from many, many different kinds of diseases, or will make you handle them better. So I exercise for fitness. I eat a very healthful diet, and I try to stay in good condition. But I can tell you, as you get older, you slow down, and it's not. I don't bounce around like I did 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, that is understandable, you know. But it's still, I still find it very impressive. So that's cool. But the reason I got you on was to talk about not so much about your swimming and how you kind of win world championships age 89, but about some of the work that you've done on questionable medical approaches and techniques, and it's a term that you call quackery, which I think most people will probably be familiar with the term.
I use the term quackery as a evidence, and calling it quackery or deciding whether it is or not is not the answer. Is not what I do. I try to see, does it make sense? And I've done this largely as a public service, as a hobby, but occasionally I testify in a court case or disciplinary proceeding. I've done the most fun is doing undercover investigations where I pretend to be a practitioner or a store or a patient, and I collect information that the seller would not want to give out publicly, but I get it, and then I see how that I sometimes report on it and so on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, you obviously find this work very important, because let's face it, people that either don't tell the truth when they're trying to sell you something, or I don't know, what do you find that the people that purvey such methods, is it because they don't tell the truth, or they actually don't know themselves and they believe what they're doing to be correct? Because there's kind of a bit of a difference there.
Some people are sincere. Some people sincerely believe what they say. They may not appear to be dishonest. They may be mistaken. It doesn't really matter if you're at the other end and you have a need. The question is, if you go for some method, will it meet your need? And the answer is almost never. And if it's something that you have an urgent need, it can be very harmful if you do something that doesn't work while your disease is progressing. I mean, I've met people with cancer who had very, very easily treatable cancer and decided not to get the treatment, and instead they had herbs or other products, and they died as a result. And I'll never forget the one woman I saw who started out with a treatable breast cancer and decided she was afraid of medical treatment, even though it wasn't that difficult. And so for a long time, she used herbs and other things. And I saw her on her deathbed, and she still believed that she did the right thing by avoiding medical treatment. But she died as a result.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that throws up really quite an interesting ethical question. You know, if she was happy is not the right word, but she, with her situation, she thought she did the best for herself. Well, I don't know.
She was. I don't know that she was happy. She was in denial, and her judgment was very bad. I mean, she might have lived another 10 years. Now she was She had a lung full of cancer. She was drowning in her secretions. She could hardly breathe. I don't think she was happy. And I mean, her husband said that she made the right decision, but nobody else in the area thought she did. But most people who are victims of quackery are not physically harmed. They just simply waste a lot of money. And some of them are distracted from getting good care. The most important thing, some of the most important things in health is having a healthy lifestyle. And some people think that they're doing great because they pop a lot of pills. It'd be a lot better if they did exercise and watched their weight and ate a good diet. They would be, on average, much more healthy and live longer and live more comfortably.
Well, I mean, that stands for a lot of things. I mean, if you do some exercise and live a healthy life, you're going to do much better generally. But so, I mean, I've come across an awful lot of things that I find that are potentially examples of quackery. I'll call it quackery if that's all right. But there are so many sort of different examples. I thought we might try and sort of hone down on a couple of potentials. So, for instance, something that I've really noticed. So I live in London, and I get the tube train, the subway in London, and they have adverts on the subway for people to take notice of when they're going to work, what have you. And sometimes about a third of them, at least, are for vitamins and supplements. I mean, that, a huge amount of money spent on vitamins and supplements. And I can't help thinking that, a lot of these are probably not very useful.
Worse than that, almost none of them are. There are a few vitamins that some people might need. If people are eating a vegetarian diet, for example, it may not have enough B12 because vegetables tend not to have B12. It's mostly in meats. So if you're a strict vegetarian, you need to take B12 in some form. But if you eat a well-rounded diet, you don't need to take B12. There are a few single ingredient supplements, calcium, vitamin D, and B12 for some people. They need attention. You need to be sure you're getting enough. But the mixtures, almost none of them are particularly useful. And so the vast majority of stuff that people take, the vitamins and supplements, they're just wasting their money. Once in a while, they'll have contamination of one kind or another, but that's not terribly common. But mostly it's a waste of money. And if you take too much of it, you might get sick from that.
Well, I thought I'd do my own little sort of experiment. So I Googled, I did a search for weight loss and algal pills, algae. So pills made out of some sort of extract from algae. And I just put in...
Well, algae, some algae have had a nerve toxin in them.
Yes.
They basically have no medicinal properties. They have a couple of nutrients, but if you eat a reasonable diet, you'll get it anyway. And it's better to spend your money on nourishing food. So,
but the point of the story is, I did this Google search and I got 2.2 million hits. There's not one or two, 2.2 million. So there's a lot of people talking about this and I guess selling this. So making money off it. I mean, it just seems bonkers to me.
It's a product that I would recommend nobody take. But there are a lot of people who have false beliefs, and false beliefs, you can get away with it sometimes, but if you have a health problem, false beliefs can kill you.
Well, I suppose the bigger question is, how do we get here? What makes people believe this stuff? What can possibly, if someone think, right, I'm overweight, if I take these pills that have some algae extracts in, I'll be fine. Something must lead to these beliefs.
No, well, there's no single answer. A number of factors can influence people's beliefs and make them vulnerable. Many people simply believe that if it weren't true, the government would stop the claims. But a lot of the claims come from, that's not true. A lot of claims come from sources that in countries where there's no consumer protection whatsoever. And the governments don't do such a great job of protecting consumers. In the United Kingdom, you have the British Advertising Standards Authority, which can tell advertisers to stop making certain claims, and some of them do, and some of them don't. But they almost never pay a price for their wrongdoing. They can make the claim, make a lot of money. They're told to stop, and they stop, and then they go on to something else. Okay. In the United States, we can occasionally get one of them fined or that sort of thing. But for the most part, there's no economic incentive to tell the truth.
So does that mean, like, it's a bit of a lost cause? Because I have to say, some of this stuff sometimes really upsets me. So am I just going to continue being upset? It sounds like it. It's a bit of a lost cause.
It's a tough business. I mean, there are people who are dishonest, and there are people who sincerely believe in what they're saying, and there are some people who spread the beliefs who have no incentive other than they feel they're doing a good job.
Right.
They want to tell their friends and neighbors. So somebody takes a pill, feels better, and says, "Oh, the pill made me feel better," when that's not necessarily true. So you have, and then there are people who engage in wishful thinking. There are people who simply don't understand that there are ups and downs to how people feel, and if you take something when you're feeling down, there's a good chance you'll get up again. And if you say, "Well, it's because of the pill I took," you may go on telling people about it. And so you multiply this by millions of people doing this sort of thing, and there's a body of belief that arises that this might be useful. And the internet, of course, enables all these things to be spread and magnified.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, let me ask you about a slightly different sort of nuance, but somewhat similar. I did another Google, and it was I Googled detox methods, right? And that got 128 million hits. So there's obviously an awful lot of people kind of interested in detox, whatever that is, because I tend to think, I'm healthy. I've got a couple of kidneys. I've got a liver. My body's probably pretty good at getting rid of the rubbish. But lots of people don't have that belief. It would appear.
There are a lot of people who are spreading the idea that people have a problem with detoxification. Now, the factual situation is that our bodies, primarily the liver, have the ability to remove foreign substances that may be toxic. They make a chemical change, and then they go out in the kidneys. And if you're not getting, it goes on all the time, and if you're not being overwhelmed with poison, you're going to detoxify just fine. But now people come along and say, "Oh, you have a toxic buildup, and they have products and tests, or they may be part of their naturopaths as part of their philosophy that most people need to be detoxified, and so they have products and services that are claimed to do this, and you have thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of people pushing products or services that have to do with detoxification. And to an unsophisticated person, it might make sense. We all know there's such a thing as pollution. Well, if there's pollution, maybe my body is suffering from the things that pollute. So, okay, if I can take a pill and it'll knock out the polluting substances, yay. Many of the detoxification products are laxatives. And so you get diarrhea and they're telling the buyer, oh, it's flushing out the toxins. Well, how do you know? Scientists can know, but the average person has to rely on who you trust. And whether or not you trust somebody doesn't depend upon how logical the person is. It may depend upon a lot of things.
And so have you come across any of these sort of detox methods which, are actually dangerous?
Well, I would say that the use of laxatives to detox is potentially dangerous. It certainly will. It'll give you diarrhea. That may or may not be very dangerous, but it's unpleasant.
Sure.
The dangerous thing really comes in putting your trust in the wrong place. That if you're not particularly sick, what you do doesn't matter a lot. But if you have a health problem, seeking help in the wrong place or not getting it may result in permanent damage or death.
Right.
Not a tremendous number of people. After all, the people doing this don't want their customers to die. So there is some limit.
Not good for business.
No, it's definitely not good for business. Yeah. There are, one of the procedures that I found particularly annoying is that there are thousands of practitioners scattered around the world who will tell people who consult them that they may be suffering from heavy metal toxicity and will give them a test. It's actually a phony test. And then say to them, you have heavy metal toxicity. You need to detoxify. Here, take these pills or undergo intravenous treatment, chelation therapy. All of these things have a certain percentage of side effects. They may not kill you, but there's no benefit involved in the procedure, and you might be missing out on what's wrong. You have a symptom, and you're told that it's due to toxicity and it's due to something else. You may wind up keeping your symptom,
right?
Instead of getting fixed.
Yeah. All right. No, I get it. Let's move on to something else, which I know a lot of people know about and like and use, and that's homeopathy. Now, which is kind of essentially taking a sugar pill at a very, very incredibly low concentration. And a lot of people do that. And I must admit, I've actually given homeopathy pills to my kids.
For what kind of symptoms?
Well, if they knock their knee or something. Mainly I do it if they're like, oh, Daddy, my knee hurts. I mean, they're older now. This was a while ago. So I'll give them...
I didn't understand what you said.
Okay, so my children are a bit older now, so this was a while ago. But say if they fall over and scrape their knee, and it's my knee hurts, if I give them something that I know, it's a sugar pill, it won't really do any harm, but actually it might make them feel better. Do you know what I mean? Just give
Okay.
them
So
something.
you're saying that giving something that you know or don't know won't do anything might help people by making them think they're getting something. They might have less symptoms.
Yeah. Well, it
That's
certainly
true.
worked for my children
That
sometimes.
that
Yeah.
it's true that sometimes people will have a placebo effect where they do something, they take a pill, and it relieves their anxiety a little bit, so they feel a little better. And you say that's not harmful. I say it's always harmful because you don't just take a pill, you take a belief. And if you come out thinking that the pill has helped you, you've been mentally damaged because you're more vulnerable to use it for something else. Now, if you take it, let's say if you have a scraped knee, it's not going to do your knee any harm if you take a pill, but it's not going to do you any good. And it does cost money. And you add up how much it costs society, it's a lot of money. And so people talk about placebos. The placebo effect is very well known. If you expect something might work, it might make your symptoms less. But that's only temporary, usually just a few hours. It does not affect the disease. And if you take a placebo and you get better and you think the placebo did it, you've been mentally harmed. And maybe the next disease you get that has a treatment, if you take this instead, you'll have a very serious outcome. It doesn't happen a lot, but there's no justification for taking homeopathy pills. And the homeopaths say, well, if the placebo effect can help you, what's the harm? The answer is no one has been able to reliably administer homeopathic products. So in order to demonstrate that they actually have a placebo effect that works, most of the time they do absolutely nothing. It's the same as doing nothing. And you say, well, is doing nothing harmful? The answer is it depends. If you have something that requires doing something, then doing nothing is harmful. So homeopathy is basically an organized marketplace for doing nothing.
Okay, so we've spoken about a sort of glossed over a few subjects because it's a massive area. There's so much that people can buy that are sold as cures for this and that and aren't necessarily cures at all. But is it really sort of a growth industry? Do you come across new things and new claims frequently?
I used to refer to the supplement of the month club. It seemed during the 1980s and 1990s, there was something new discovered about at least once a month. When the internet came along, it became a supplement of the minute club. The number is so great that I couldn't even begin to keep track of them. And so what I've done is to try to provide lists of characteristics. If you encounter them, you should not trust the person who has the characteristics. They call them signs of the quack or signs of quackery or ploys that can trick you and so on. There are about 60 of them. We have several articles in this section on quackwatch.org on how to spot misinformation. We have an article on signs of a quacky website, and it lists about 20 things that if you see on a website, you should leave.
Can you mention one or two just now?
Well, the claim that everybody should take vitamins, the claim that everybody needs to be worried about detoxification, claims that fluoridation is dangerous. Can't think of the others offhand, but there are about about 20 of them, and they indicate that, in my opinion, a website would be not trustworthy.
Right.
And if you stay away from the sites that are not trustworthy, you'll stay away from 95% of all the junk that's being sold.
All right. Okay. It's in everything we do. It's important to sort of question what we do and why we're doing things, for sure. But if we end up getting,
you shouldn't be questioning everything. You need to develop a body of knowledge that's really solid. And what's really solid is we know that if people eat a row balanced diet, this gives them the greater odds of doing well. Not everything is nutritional, but there's no question that regular exercise is helpful for people. There's no question that smoking is dangerous. It'll take 10 years off your life. So there are certain very fundamental things about personal care that you need to do, and most people don't do them. At least in the United States, a huge number of people are overweight, and what they should be doing, every one of them, is some kind of regular exercise. People going on crash diets don't usually succeed, but those who do regular exercise program, for example, walking, will have a better chance of controlling their weight, and even if they're heavy, if they stay fit, they'll still be better off. So,
right, and they don't all have to be world champions.
One is do the right thing, and the other is avoid the stuff that doesn't work.
Sure. All right. So maybe my question was kind of wrong, really. The question should be more how to get good information. And the information, broadly speaking, what you just outlined, isn't it? But, what are the sources we can trust?
Well, we actually list and I think link to more than 500 sources that we think are trustworthy, mostly government agencies and health professional groups, some major voluntary groups. All of them have very good information on their website. We have a site called Internet Health Pilot, not very well known, but it and on Quackwatch itself, we have lists of trustworthy sites, probably at least 500 of them. That's more sites than you need.
Sure.
That's plus your own doctor, if your doctor is a sensible person, can steer you. There are some good publications. I don't know the ones in the United Kingdom, but there are good publications and there are good websites. And if you stick to the government agencies and the major professional groups, you're going to get good information.
Okay, that certainly sounds like good advice. So, something that we touched on a bit earlier before we started recording, we were talking about things that are published in peer-reviewed journals, and that's often seen, or I've often seen that as a gold standard. If something is published in a peer-reviewed journal, it will be accurate, or that's the best of mankind's knowledge as it stands.
That used to be true. That peer review means that when you submit an article, the editor will send it out to people that are considered experts who know as much or more than you do, and they'll look at it and make suggestions and so on. There are many excellent journals that still do that. The problem is that in the last 20 years, there's been a rise of publications. They call themselves journals that go through the motions, but basically there's no good judgment involved. And so there's a lot of junk published, and it may be difficult for Well, I don't think that people who are not professionally trained should be reading scientific literature anyway. They should be reading reviews and summaries from trusted sources who can interpret it. But there are a lot of journals that are very low quality,
Right.
and so we have and there's so many now. It's not even possible to make a list. So,
Okay, so this is not a perfect situation by any means. So, I mean, I think in our chat here, we've been talking for, I don't know, half an hour or something, and the scale of the problem, you've shown that the scale of the problem is vast. People spend massive amounts of money on things that they probably don't need, certainly don't need, could even be harmful, this kind of thing. So, it's a problem which isn't going to go away anytime soon, could potentially even get worse.
well, the situation is the situation in the last couple of years in the United States is different from what it's been throughout history. The people who are opposed to vaccination and particularly COVID public health measures to contain COVID-19 have gotten a lot of have reached wide audiences, and there are now millions of people who have all kinds of crazy ideas, and it's even affected the quality of our government. It affects who gets elected. It's just a terrible situation where a lot of people have not been doing the right thing to contain the COVID epidemic. A lot of people are not vaccinated, and so on.
Well, certainly similar here, and very often what happens in the States ends up here sooner or later.
Okay. Yeah.
The whole vaccination topic, not just COVID-19. That's another complete topic. I think vaccine rates are going down, certainly for things like polio, stuff like that. And sometimes people ask me if they should have the polio injection. My answer tends to be, don't ask me, ask this old bloke, because actually there are some people still around. They're a bit older, who maybe have a bit of a limp. And if you ask them, what's the limp from? They say, actually, I had polio as a child. Ask them if they should get the vaccination or not, and they'll probably say, get it.
There are public health agencies in some of the advanced countries that make it very clear what's useful and what isn't. The World Health Organization has issues guidelines. The Center for the CDC in Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States has good guidelines for the United States, and they're worthwhile. I've been vaccinated against COVID 5 times, and I've had 5 of them, and I'm very happy to say I didn't get it, even though friends and neighbors, and at one point my wife had it, and I didn't get it. She got it during a trip. She was exposed at an airport. That's the only reason. I mean, in our daily life, we're not exposed. We live in a community where people wear masks, wore masks, and 99% of the people that live in our community have been vaccinated. So,
yeah,
people are not so lucky. Particularly before the vaccine was developed, that there was a body of nonsense that said don't wear masks, and as a result, thousands and thousands of people died unnecessarily.
I mean, this is all part of a discussion which will continue on and on. So I think probably as a way of a summary, a good way of a summary, although it's such a vast topic, it's hard to summarize. Can you please tell people the website for your the address for your website again, so people can go there?
Yeah, for the last 20 years, I've administered a website called Quackwatch. It's quackwatch.org, and we now have over 15,000 files that talk about things you should do and things you should avoid, who you can trust, who you shouldn't trust, how to tell the difference. You can spend months reading it, reading the various things. And if you do that, I think you'll come out with a much higher percentage of correct, the ability to find correct information. Ideally, people should have a health anchor. Most cases, an individual physician, but there may be others that they can ask questions of. But most of the things that you shouldn't be doing, if you understand how to spot misinformation, you'll be able to avoid. And we have lots of articles on how to spot misinformation. So the trick is to find out how to look at reliable sources and how to avoid not reliable sources. You need to have a certain level of suspicion, but not too much.
Okay, excellent. Look, thank you so much indeed for chatting. Lots of people will find this interesting. Lots of people will want to ask more questions about it, etc. So, it's good. So many thanks.
Yeah, we also, by the way, have a free newsletter. It comes out once a week. It's one of the few things in the world that's absolutely free. You just
How do people get that?
You go to the top of Quackwatch and it says free newsletter, and
Okay.
it tells you how to sign up.
I think even I might be able to handle that. I'm going to do that. Again, many thanks for chatting.
Okay, thank you.
Please do remember, if you're listening via a podcast, to do the subscribe and like. That's if you like the podcast. And do come back next week. Thank you very much to my guest. That was Dr. Stephen Barrett. And a big thank you to you for listening.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
That was the Relaxback UK show with me, Mike Dilke. Thank you for listening, and please do join us again next time.